Amara was only 28, but life had aged her far beyond her years. She carried herself with quiet strength, though her shoulders bore the invisible weight of responsibilities most people never had to face. Each morning began the same way, waking up in a cramped apartment with peeling paint on the walls, brewing weak tea because she couldn't afford milk, and making sure her younger brother had enough to eat before heading off to school. Her brother, Sammy, was only 12, bright and full of dreams, but those dreams cost money Amara didn't have. Their parents had passed away years ago, and since then, she had played the role of mother, sister, and provider all in one. She worked as a caregiver because it was the only job where her heart aligned with her hands. She could give love to those who had no one left, even if she returned home each night with nothing but exhaustion in her pockets. On a particularly cold evening, Amara received an assignment from the agency she worked for. They wanted her to care for an elderly woman named Mrs. Evelyn, who lived in an old but well-kept home at the edge of town. Many caregivers had been through that door before, but few stayed long. Evelyn was frail, lonely, and often in pain, which made her difficult to please. But Amara, unlike others, didn't flinch at the challenge. She had learned long ago that patience was not weakness, it was the purest form of strength. When Amara first entered the house, she noticed the silence. No laughter, no music, no warmth, only the ticking of a clock in the hallway and the soft wheeze of Evelyn's breathing. The old woman was seated in a wheelchair by the window, her silver hair tied loosely, her hands trembling as they rested on her lap. She turned slowly to face Amara, her eyes carrying the weight of years, filled with stories untold and sorrow unspoken. Amara walked forward, kneeling beside her. "Good evening, Mrs. Evelyn," she said softly. "I'm Amara. I'll be helping you from now on." Evelyn gave her a long, measured look. "You'll leave too," she murmured, her voice raspy with age. "They always do." The words pierced Amara's heart, but she only smiled gently. "Not today," she whispered, taking the old woman's fragile hand in hers. From that moment, a bond began to form. Amara treated Evelyn not as a burden, but as a human being who still deserved care, love, and dignity. She helped her eat when her hands were too unsteady to hold a spoon. She brushed her thinning hair with tenderness, humming lullabies she used to sing to her brother when he was small. In the evenings, when Evelyn struggled to sleep, Amara would read aloud from her favorite books or simply sit by her bedside, holding her hand until she drifted off. Days turned into weeks, and something remarkable began to happen. Evelyn, who had once been bitter and withdrawn, started to smile again. Neighbors noticed her sitting by the garden window, her face brighter than it had been in years. They often saw Amara wheeling her outside on sunny mornings, both of them laughing as if they shared a secret no one else could understand. For Amara, these small victories meant everything. She had no wealth, no comfort waiting at home, but when Evelyn looked at her with gratitude in her eyes, Amara felt richer than any millionaire could ever be. Still, life behind the scenes was harsh. At night, after returning home, she often found herself counting the last of her coins, wondering how she would pay the rent or buy textbooks for Sammy. Sometimes she skipped dinner so her brother could eat more. Her shoes were worn, her clothes faded, but she never complained. She believed her struggles were not permanent, they were stepping stones towards something better, though she didn't know when that better would come. One evening, as she fed Evelyn a bowl of warm soup, the old woman's hand shook so violently that the spoon nearly fell. Without hesitation, Amara placed her own hand over hers, steadying it with such gentleness that Evelyn's eyes welled with tears. "Why do you care so much?" Evelyn asked suddenly, her voice trembling not just with weakness, but with emotion. Amara smiled softly. "Because everyone deserves to be cared for. I know what it feels like to be forgotten. I wouldn't want that for you." Evelyn said nothing, but her lips quivered as if she were holding back words long buried. Unbeknownst to Amara, Her simple acts of kindness weren't going unnoticed. A shadow often lingered near the doorway, watching quietly. Someone had been observing her patience, her dedication, the way she spoke to Evelyn as though she were family. But Amara, too busy pouring her heart into her work, never realized. She continued each day with the same unwavering devotion, pushing Evelyn's wheelchair around the garden, massaging her hands when the arthritis made them stiff, or simply listening when the old woman wanted to talk about her youth. Sometimes, Amara even saved small portions of her own lunch to share with Evelyn, pretending it was a special recipe, just to see her smile. Evelyn began to feel alive again. Her days of loneliness slowly faded, replaced by a warmth she hadn't known in years. And though she rarely spoke of her family, there was always a sense that someone, somewhere, cared about her deeply. Amara never asked about Evelyn's past, never pried into her personal life. To her, it didn't matter whether Evelyn had been rich or poor, celebrated or forgotten. What mattered was that here and now, in her final years, she felt seen, valued, and loved. But what Amara could not know was that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. Every gentle word she spoke, every small kindness she gave, was building a bridge toward a future she hadn't dared to dream of. And soon, the person watching from the shadows would step forward, and Amara's world would never be the same again. The afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting golden streaks across the old living room where Evelyn rested in her wheelchair. Amara was in the kitchen, carefully preparing a tray with soup, fresh bread, and a small cup of tea. She hummed quietly to herself, hoping the melody would lift Evelyn's spirits, as it often did. Just as she adjusted the tray, the sound of an expensive car pulling into the driveway caught her attention. It wasn't the familiar sound of a neighbor's old vehicle. This was smoother, deeper, the unmistakable purr of an engine crafted for luxury. Curious but cautious, Amara peeked through the window. A sleek black car gleamed in the afternoon light, and from it stepped a tall man in a sharp, tailored suit. His presence was magnetic, commanding attention even from a distance. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power, the kind of man Amara only read about in magazines while waiting at bus stops. Her heart quickened. Who could he be? Moments later, the front door opened, and the man entered the house with quiet authority. His eyes, sharp and searching, softened when they landed on the frail figure of Evelyn. Without a word, he crossed the room and knelt beside his mother, gently kissing her forehead. "Mother," he said softly, his voice a mixture of warmth and sorrow. "You look so much brighter." Evelyn's lips curved into a fragile smile, her eyes glistening. She lifted her trembling hand and pointed toward the kitchen where Amara stood frozen, tray in hand. "It's because of her. She has given me back something I thought I'd lost forever: care, dignity, and companionship." Amara felt her breath catch in her throat. Suddenly, the man's piercing gaze turned to her. It was the kind of gaze that seemed to see far beyond appearances, cutting into truths one tried to hide. He rose to his full height and extended a hand toward her. "I'm Daniel Hayes." The name struck Amara like a bolt of lightning. She had seen it countless times, on business magazines, newspaper headlines, even advertisements across the city. Daniel Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Enterprises, a man whispered about in boardrooms and admired by millions for building one of the most powerful companies in the nation. Her fingers trembled as she set the tray down on the table. She could barely find her voice. I'm Amara, your mother's caregiver." Daniel studied her quietly. "I know. I've been watching." The words made her heart pound. Watching. What did he mean? He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I've seen the way you treat her. Most caregivers clock in, do the bare minimum, and leave. But you treat her like she's family." Amara lowered her eyes, feeling both humbled and nervous under his scrutiny. "She deserves that," she murmured. "Everyone does." Daniel tilted his head slightly, as though her answer revealed more about her character than she realized. He turned back to his mother, gently adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. She was right, he said softly. You've given her dignity when so many others failed. Amara swallowed hard. She never sought recognition, she simply did what her heart told her was right. Yet here stood one of the most powerful men she had ever encountered, acknowledging her with a sincerity that left her speechless. After ensuring Evelyn was comfortable, Daniel motioned for Amara to step into the hallway with him. His tone was calm, but there was something firm beneath it. Tell me honestly, he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. You've been struggling, haven't you? The question cut straight through her like a blade. Amara stiffened, her instinct urging her to deny it. But Daniel's gaze was unwavering, as if he had already read the truth in her tired eyes, her worn clothes, the way her shoes bore marks of years of use. I manage, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Managing isn't the same as living, Daniel replied, his tone gentle yet heavy with meaning. Before Amara could respond, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. He extended it toward her. Take this. Amara hesitated, her pride screaming against her need. She slowly accepted the envelope, her fingers brushing against his. When she opened it, her eyes widened. Inside was not only her full salary for the month but also a letter, a formal offer of permanent employment under Hayes Enterprises, with a salary that seemed impossible for someone like her. Included was a clause for full support of her brother's education, right up to university. Tears filled Amara's eyes as her hands shook. I can't accept this, she whispered. I don't deserve. Daniel cut her off gently. You deserve more than this. You gave my mother your heart when you had nothing to gain. You've shown me something money can't buy, genuine compassion. Let me give you what you should have had all along: stability, respect, and a future for your brother. Amara's knees felt weak. For years, she had fought silently, carrying burdens no one noticed. She had prayed for a miracle, though she often doubted one would ever come. And now, standing before her, was the answer to those silent prayers. Evelyn called softly from the other room. Daniel, don't let her refuse. She's too humble for her own good. Amara turned to see the old woman smiling through tears. Evelyn's frail hands trembled as she whispered, You've been the daughter I never had. Now let my son give back what you gave me. Overwhelmed, Amara fell to her knees, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. Thank you. I don't know how to. Daniel knelt beside her, his voice steady but warm. You don't need to thank me. Kindness always finds its way back. You've cared for my mother when she needed it most. Now, it's my turn to care for you. For the first time in years, Amara felt the crushing weight on her shoulders begin to lift. No longer would she have to wonder if her brother would go hungry, or if rent would swallow the little she earned. No longer would she walk home each night praying tomorrow would be easier. Her life, once defined by quiet suffering, had been rewritten in that single moment, because she chose kindness when no one was watching. Amara wept. Not from despair this time, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing her struggles had finally led her to a door she never thought she would find. And as Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, she realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest acts of love can echo into miracles far greater than one can imagine.